January 26th, 2026. Windsor Confidential drops a royal bombshell that is shaking the monarchy to its core. What might have once been dismissed as a private family disagreement has erupted into a constitutional crisis, one that threatens to reshape the Windsor legacy for decades to come. The line has been drawn, and Prince Harry now has only 30 days to decide where his loyalties lie, a choice between allegiance to his father, the crown, and his family, or loyalty to Meghan Markle and the life he has carved outside royal authority. In an unprecedented move in modern royal history, King Charles III has issued a personal, yet institutionally ratified ultimatum to his youngest son, a document that blends paternal heartbreak with the absolute weight of constitutional authority. The ultimatum is as simple as it is devastating. Divorce Meghan Markle within 30 days or face complete and irreversible exile from the British royal family. The letter was delivered through a secure, confidential diplomatic channel, personally escorted by Lord Alderton, the King's private secretary. On the 9th of January, 2026, it arrived at the Sussex residence in Montecito, California, instantly igniting a storm behind the estate's gates and sending shockwaves across royal circles worldwide. Sources inside the palace report that Lord Alderton remained on site for nearly an hour as Harry read the 11-page document alone. Observers described the atmosphere as heavy, almost cinematic, like watching the slow unraveling of a dynasty. The terms were clear, absolute, and non-negotiable. Harry must legally dissolve his marriage to Meghan under both US and UK law and submit to a monitored reintegration process in the United Kingdom, overseen by the Royal Standards and Conduct Council, the RSCC. Compliance comes with conditions carefully calibrated between mercy and strict governance. Harry would be permitted to return to Britain with Archie and Lilibet, retaining the title of Prince, but without any restoration of royal duties, privileges, or ceremonial functions. The Duke of Sussex title, along with its coats of arms, patronages, and security entitlements, would remain suspended unless and until the RSCC completed its indefinite, rigorous review process. Oversight of this process will be handled by Princess Anne, the de facto disciplinary head of the monarchy, Sir Nigel Pembridge, Royal Council for Constitutional Integrity, and Lady Eleanor Havisham, chair of the Royal Ethics Review Board. Together, they will examine Harry's public statements, media involvement, adherence to royal behavioural codes, and the educational and environmental stability provided for his children, while also ensuring that no commercial exploitation of the family name occurs. There is no set timeline for this process. It could take months, years, or even decades, and it may never formally conclude. Should Harry refuse or ignore the ultimatum, the consequences are permanent and absolute. He would face complete removal from the line of succession, revocation of all titles including Duke of Sussex, Earl of Dunbarton, and Baron Kilkeel, permanent withdrawal of funding from the Duchy of Cornwall and all royal trust entities, eviction from Frogmore Cottage, termination of heraldic rights, and exclusion from royal ceremonies including funerals, jubilees, and coronations. Perhaps most painfully, his children would lose their status as royal descendants under the Sovereign Grandchildren Protection Clause, quietly amended in 2024 after the Sussex family's commercial partnerships with Netflix and Spotify caused uproar within the institution. The language of the letter, partially leaked by a source inside the Sussex household, reveals a deeply layered narrative. It is not only a monarch executing constitutional duty, it is a father confronting profound personal heartbreak. You chose her once, and I respected it, but the choice to continually dishonour your heritage, to reduce the institution to a currency of spectacle that I cannot condone. Diana would want peace, not permanence. She would want your children to feel protected, not positioned, Charles reportedly wrote. The king also addressed Harry's accusations of emotional neglect following Princess Diana's death. You say I did not hold you enough when you cried. Perhaps that's true, but I am holding you now, not in arms, but in consequence. The tone is firm, sorrowful, and laden with the vocabulary of finality. This ultimatum traces its origins back to a private 50-minute meeting on September 18, 2025, at Clarence House. According to palace aides, Charles proposed a pathway to reconciliation, but on one strict condition: Meghan would have no role in any future institutional framework. Harry reportedly refused outright, stating, "I am a husband first, not a prince." That moment, sources say, marked the breaking point, ending 5 years of tentative olive branches and signalling the monarchy's shift to firm institutional resolve. Weeks later, after consultation with the Privy Council and senior royals, Charles authorised the drafting of the letter. "This is not mere emotion," a palace official stated. "It is strategy. You are either in or out. There is no grey zone." The timing was deliberate. Amid renewed media speculation, collapsing Sussex brand deals, and escalating public scrutiny, Charles sent a message not only to Harry, but to the world. The crown will not be undermined from within. Royal titles exist to uphold duty, not to serve as tools for personal spectacle, and no family name can be leveraged to destroy the very institution that gave it meaning. The second half of the letter shifts focus from a father's sorrow to the firm authority of a reigning monarch. Charles meticulously outlines how Harry has violated the royal code of conduct, making him ineligible for residual privileges of the crown unless he formally repents and recommits. This is not personal retaliation. This is codified accountability. The Royal Code of Conduct, compiled under King George V in 1923 and updated during Queen Elizabeth II's reign in 2014, governs both public-facing expectations and internal ethical obligations. It is enforced quietly by the RSCC, monitored by the Lord Chamberlain, and breaches are tracked and acted upon behind closed doors. According to the letter, Harry has triggered multiple major breaches over the past 6 years. These include making public announcements without approval, monetizing royal identity through Netflix and Spotify deals, defaming close family members in interviews and publications, attempting to wear military uniforms during moments of national mourning, strategically invoking his children's royal lineage while rejecting traditional Church of England protocols and requesting private financial relief just weeks before media projects that undermined his public statements about royal life. Charles directly counters Harry's claims of abandonment, noting a video call invitation sent by Lord Alderton on May 24, 2023, which Harry's assistant declined due to filming commitments. According to the King, this crystallised the tragic gap between perception and effort, highlighting the disconnect that has fueled public debate and speculation for years. The ultimatum is more than legal directives. It is a historic declaration blending constitutional enforcement with personal accountability. Compliance restores only partial privilege, while refusal results in permanent exile. Every move Harry makes from this point forward will be scrutinised and measured by the highest authorities of the realm. Titles are not shields, they are responsibilities. The monarchy cannot survive if its name is exploited for spectacle or personal gain. From emotional admonishments to detailed accounts of breaches, Charles's ultimatum is both a father's warning and a sovereign's command. It is sorrowful, yet unflinching, paternal, yet resolute, a document destined to become a landmark moment in Windsor history. The clock is ticking, and the 30-day window is merciless. The stakes could not be higher, not for Harry, not for his children, and not for the institution itself. The tragic gap between perception and effort has never been more apparent, and the fate of a prince, his children, and the legacy of the Windsor name hangs in the balance. The events of that tense 50-minute meeting at Clarence House later that year set the stage for a decision that would forever alter the course of the Sussex story. During that private encounter, King Charles made it clear that any hope of reconciliation with his youngest son could only move forward if Meghan Markle was entirely excluded from the institutional fold. The letter spells this out with stark clarity. Should Harry comply and proceed with a divorce, he could return to Britain, but only under conditions of strict supervision. Residence would be in a secured royal estate, likely Sandringham Annex or one of Windsor Park's auxiliary properties, carefully prepared to accommodate both Archie and Lilibet. Their rights as citizens would be fully recognised, offering the children complete UK residency and diplomatic travel protections. Their education would mirror that of Prince George and Princess Charlotte, ensuring equal access to the most prestigious institutions. Public appearances would be restricted entirely. Harry would not speak for the monarchy nor represent it in any ceremonial or symbolic capacity. This is not a return to power, the letter emphasizes. It is a bridge back to family, not a throne. Symbolic status remains, but without HRH styling or operational duties, and evaluation would be indefinite, subject to quarterly RSCC review. King Charles frames it as a pathway toward connection, a chance to mend familial bonds without restoring full authority, forcing Harry to navigate between two colliding realities, one grounded in duty, the other suspended in illusion. Lady Eleanor Habersham, chair of the RSCC, offered an off-the-record briefing on January 24, 2026, confirming that as the royal deadline approaches with only 13 days remaining, the emotional battleground has shifted entirely to the confines of their Montecito estate. The Sussex household is described by insiders as being in a state of total lockdown, both physically and emotionally. Sources close to Harry and Meghan paint a stark picture. The couple no longer operates with a unified strategy or shared emotional tone. What once was a defiant stance against the crown is slowly unraveling into tension and private chaos. At the core lies a profound divergence, Harry's inner conflict against Meghan's instinct for survival. Those near Harry describe him as withdrawn and haunted, rendered sleepless by the ultimatum. He reportedly roams the gardens at 3 a.m., weighed down by the gravity of the king's words, which cut deeper than any political consequence could. For Harry, it is the finality, the sense of a goodbye already delivered. Meanwhile, Meghan is described as furious, calculating, and terrified simultaneously. From her perspective, this is not merely a reckoning, it is an attack carefully timed to cast her as the wedge between father and son. A former publicist reported Meghan saying, "They want me erased, humiliated, financially destroyed. If Harry caves, they get everything they want. If he doesn't, I will lose him now." While loyalty and love dominate public narratives, the silent weight of financial reality anchors the crisis. After Spotify's cancellation in 2024 and delays to their Netflix project, the Sussex household reportedly faces severe cash flow issues. Court filings in Santa Barbara, tied to LLCs associated with Archie and Lilibet, confirm unpaid vendor bills and stalled refinancing negotiations with Tyler Perry regarding Montecito Mansion. Charles's letter includes limited transitional support, but only if Harry complies. Refusal triggers immediate and absolute consequences. No more Duke or Duchess of Sussex titles. A loss of symbolic influence in public engagements, restricted access to Hollywood prestige deals, and removal from charitable boards tied to Windsor heritage. Without these titles, the Sussex brand has no engine, and Meghan is acutely aware of this reality, while Harry refuses to acknowledge it. The pressure is immense. Harry must choose alone, with the outcome devastating either path. Divorce means personal guilt and loss of familial life for his children. Choosing Meghan condemns him to permanent exclusion from the monarchy, severing his bond with King Charles, Prince William, and the broader royal legacy. Observers recall Harry's past comments, particularly from his 2021 podcast, when he stated, "I didn't walk away from the family. I walked away from the pain. I just wish they'd asked why. Now the institution asks nothing. It demands." For Meghan, the stakes are existential. Her public image is fragile, already weakened by scandals, failed business ventures, and legal disputes. Should Harry leave her, she faces a life without active titles, no income stream from royal affiliation, no access to royal circles, and a public narrative that paints her as the architect of her own downfall. Publishers and studios would likely reject any project centered on her role in royal exile, removing any remaining platform to shape her story. Insiders now say Meghan's only viable strategy is to convince Harry that the king is bluffing, that this is a pressure tactic rather than a true consequence. But Charles is not bluffing. Time is running out, and the tension within Montecito is palpable. Sources confirm Meghan has held multiple confidential meetings with her legal counsel, a crisis PR specialist, and a financial auditor formerly tied to the Obama Foundation. Her challenge is not only Harry's choice, but the story itself. Regardless of what he decides, the narrative will be brutal. If Harry leaves, the world will not view her as wounded, but as the ambitious figure who provoked exile and divorce. If he stays, the monarchy will strip them of royal identity, eliminate Sussex branding, revoke all connections to the crown, and their children, Archie and Lilibet, will no longer be recognised as heirs, erasing any remaining link to Windsor heritage. Financial pressures compound the personal ones. The Spotify deal was terminated in July 2024, a loss estimated at $15 million. The Netflix project still exists, but has been renegotiated quietly, with payouts now project by project. The Archwell Foundation is under review after failing to deliver audited impact reports for consecutive quarters. Montecito Mansion alone costs $83,000 monthly in maintenance, staff, security and utilities, with equity further complicated by prior liens. The palace is well aware of these liabilities, which is why King Charles left one last door open. A private, carefully worded clause in the postscript directed to Meghan herself. The note, written in the King's own hand, outlines a singular path by which Meghan may exit this chapter without total disgrace. She may agree to a non-litigious, non-public divorce, sign a formal letter renouncing all future use of royal titles or stories for commercial or political purposes, except for a one-time, non-renewable grant, rumoured to be around £3.4 million to cover resettlement and legal fees. She must withdraw all claims of mistreatment made publicly between 2020 and 2025 and refrain from publishing any memoirs or docu-series about her time in the monarchy. If she accepts these terms, Meghan will be allowed to retain primary custody of Archie and Lilibet in California, with Harry maintaining full access and joint decision-making authority regarding their education, healthcare, and spiritual upbringing. Furthermore, the Crown will not challenge her immigration status or initiate formal custody proceedings in UK courts, but this offer is conditional on her complete silence and cooperation, with no attempts at renegotiation allowed. Any attempt to litigate or weaponize the divorce would immediately nullify all prior provisions, triggering a coordinated institutional response that would combine formal royal legal mechanisms with subtle, yet powerful, influence across diplomatic and public spheres. What makes this hidden clause remarkable is not merely the legal strategy itself, but the delicate balance between retribution and mercy woven through it. According to palace aides, King Charles perceives Meghan both as a destabilizing force and as a mother, a woman who, despite the turmoil, was once fully integrated into the family. "I offer, not punishment, but closure," he writes in the letter's final emotional section. "Let our children not be taught to fight ghosts for the rest of their lives." The message is clear. The monarchy is willing to allow Meghan to depart with dignity, provided she ensures that the institution itself emerges unscathed. Sources indicate that Meghan remains torn. Some insiders speculate she may secretly welcome such an exit if she can frame it as empowerment rather than exile, presenting a narrative in which she asserts agency and control. Others contend she is preparing to push back through legal avenues, perhaps through a carefully timed media appearance or the filing of documents intended to portray the monarchy as oppressive or vindictive. Yet even her staunchest supporters acknowledge the reality of her diminished leverage. The days of commanding global attention through documentaries, streaming deals, and viral headlines are behind her. What remains now is the painstaking task of reputation salvage, and the clock is rapidly running out. Amid this storm, the focus on the children has taken on an almost sacred quality. Prince Archie Harrison, Mountbatten-Windsor, and Princess Lilibet Diana, Mountbatten-Windsor, are, in many ways, the silent figures around whom the entire crisis pivots. While headlines and public scrutiny fixate on the adult conflicts and media strategies, a quieter, more delicate battle is being waged behind the walls of Montecito and within palace corridors, centering entirely on the welfare and future of these two young lives. In the King's letter, a distinct section is devoted solely to the children, framed not as a decree, but as conditional protection, a rare instance of mercy intertwined with institutional foresight. The monarchy makes it clear. The fate of Archie and Lilibet hinges directly on their father's decisions. tethering personal identity to the responsibilities Harry chooses to accept or reject. These two children, though born into royalty, have always occupied a unique position. They are the only grandchildren of the reigning monarch born outside the United Kingdom, neither baptized in the Church of England nor presented at Sandringham in the traditional sense. They have not received formal royal education or participated fully in the family's ceremonial life, aside from the Queen's funeral in 2022. By traditional metrics, they are not active heirs, yet their names remain listed in the official order of succession. Archie currently 6th, Lilibet 7th, behind Prince Louis. This, however, is a temporary status. King Charles's letter makes it explicit that their continued recognition is contingent on Harry's compliance with the Crown's terms. Should he return and agree to raise the children within the ethical and institutional framework of the monarchy, they will retain their dignity, heritage, and access to the privileges afforded to royal descendants. Should he refuse, they will be formally stripped of titles, status, and any symbolic association with the Crown, becoming private citizens in every legal and ceremonial sense. If Harry opts to rejoin the monarchy, the children would receive access to the Windsor education system, including placements at elite institutions such as Marlborough College or St George's Ascot, accompanied by full royal security provisions. They would gain symbolic roles in state ceremonies, national remembrance events, and potentially future coronations. Though they would not carry active HRH status, their names would be preserved in the heraldic registry, securing their place in the historical record. They would also retain access to trust inheritance provisions established for great-grandchildren raised within the Crown's guardianship framework. These provisions are far more than ceremonial. They represent an intergenerational guarantee of protection, security, and recognition, ensuring that their identities are formally acknowledged within the institution that created their lineage. Conversely, should Harry remain in Montecito and decline the Crown's offer, the consequences are severe and immediate. Archie and Lilibet would lose all succession rights via a formal declaration issued by the Sovereign Privy Council. Their legal access to royal trust funds, including the George VI Education Reserve, would be revoked. Their names would be expunged from official ceremonial records maintained by the College of Arms, erasing their royal heritage in both practical and historical terms. Passport privileges granted under sovereign protection would be forfeited, and the children would be permanently excluded from any elevation or ceremonial recognition, even if Harry sought re-entry decades later. Should this occur, they would become the first royal descendants in over 120 years to be formally removed from all institutional affiliation, a historical anomaly that carries profound emotional weight. The ramifications are not merely legal. Emotional displacement looms as a tangible reality for two children born into royalty, but largely raised outside its structure. Those close to Princess Catherine describe her profound heartbreak at the prospect that Lilibet, in particular, may grow up never truly knowing her cousins, George, Charlotte, and Louis, not as peers or family companions, but as distant figures encountered only through formal appearances or televised moments. Princess Anne, the voice of principal authority in the royal family, reportedly stated in a recent Windsor review, "Blood without structure becomes mythology. They are not myths. They are children, and they deserve order." Prince William has privately echoed similar concerns, emphasizing the potential long-term psychological toll should the children be severed entirely from institutional identity, only to later discover what might have been their rightful legacy. The palace also fears that if Harry and Meghan remain outside the monarchy, the children could be exploited as narrative instruments for future media projects. Concepts have already been floated for docu-series exploring royal children in exile, examining what it means to be Windsor by blood, American by circumstance, yet stripped of the privileges they were born into. Recognizing the risk of such exploitation, the Royal Ethics Board quietly drafted a safeguard titled the Child Image Protection Act, Windsor Edition. This provision legally prohibits the use of former royal descendants in any branded content, media, or commercial project, ensuring that even outside the monarchy, the dignity, privacy, and identity of Archie and Lilibet remain protected. The final section of King Charles III's ultimatum took an unexpected turn, shifting from formal decree to a deeply personal message. It addressed not the adults embroiled in the drama, but the youngest witnesses of royal consequence, Archie and Lilibet. Any attempt to commercialize, exploit, or frame their former royal status through documentaries, streaming projects, or journalistic ventures would, if recognised by Parliament under the proposed Media Responsibility Bill, carry enforceable sanctions against platforms distributing such material across the United Kingdom and Commonwealth realms. The subtle but powerful implication was clear. The children were to be shielded from the commodification of their identity, their lives no longer open to public negotiation or narrative hijacking. Yet what truly stands out is the King's decision to conclude the letter not with legal formalities, but with the handwritten note that carried the emotional weight of generations. If you cannot return for yourself, then return for them. Let them know where they come from, not through documentaries but through dinners, not through headlines but through heritage. He wrote, "This line, deceptively simple in tone, carries layers of meaning. It underscores the responsibility of parenthood, the weight of legacy, and the irreplaceable value of lived experience over spectacle." Palace insiders have confirmed that Harry lingered on this paragraph longer than any other, his eyes tracing each word as though trying to absorb both the authority and the tenderness embedded within. The note is at once a plea, a directive, and a reminder that the monarchy's strength is sustained not merely by titles, but by the human connections that give them purpose. No one yet knows whether Harry will allow this sentiment to sway his decision. What is certain, however, is that the fate of Archie and Lilibet is now being determined not by past narratives, public opinion, or media speculation, but in real time, shaped by the father who is himself navigating a crucible of loyalty, love, and consequence. The monarchy has weathered abdications, assassinations, attempted abolitions, and public crises of trust. Yet what it cannot withstand is the corrosion from within, the slow erosion of precedent and principle from those born into its protection. The stakes, as historians have noted, have rarely been more existential. Royal historian Dr. Geoffrey Banks, speaking on BBC World on the 25th of January 2026, framed the situation in stark terms. The current moment is unprecedented. As the clock ticks toward February 8th, the deadline set in King Charles's historic letter, the entire royal household is operating under conditions of extreme control. Every movement, every decision is measured, deliberate, and carefully shielded from the public eye. There are no press releases, no symbolic appearances, no statements to the waiting media. The palace hums quietly, a vast machine of governance and legacy poised to respond to a single choice that will ripple across the family, the institution, and the Commonwealth. Inside Clarence House, a quiet, phased protocol has been activated. The first stage is one of absolute silence, a deliberate pause to allow Harry to confront his decision without external influence. No intermediaries, no calls, no persuasive messaging, only the weight of his father's words and the ticking of the clock. Phase 2 involves operational preparation, legal teams, ready documents for immediate removal of titles, assets disentangled from royal oversight, and contingency plans drafted for public messaging. Phase 3, should the ultimatum be rejected, encompasses succession recalibration. Prince William and the Privy Council are reported to be finalising updates to the line of succession, including pre-recorded statements from the King, set to be released within 48 hours of the deadline. Observers outside the palace may interpret this silence as cold or rigid, but royal officials insist it is a calculated exercise in discipline and discretion. King Charles's approach mirrors the wartime philosophy of his mother: stand firm, speak once, and let action convey consequence. There is no spectacle, no staged leak, no reactive spin, only the stark clarity of authority conveyed through one envelope, 11 pages, and the inexorable march of time. Should Harry fail to respond by 11:59 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time on February 8th, the machinery of consequence will move swiftly. Formal statements, official erasure of Sussex titles from ceremonial and historical records, and a public-facing succession reset aligned with Parliament. Silence in this moment equates to exile, a permanent severance of identity and privilege. And yet, even within this framework of unflinching authority, the letter leaves room for human choice, for dignity, for closure. What will endure when the dust settles is not merely the restoration of discipline or the clarification of titles. It is the delicate preservation of legacy, carefully reasserted through boundaries drawn with precision. For Meghan, the path will be one of survival or solitude. For Archie and Lilibet, their lineage and history will be rewritten, not obliterated, but irrevocably altered by circumstance. For King Charles, it is the exercise of a father's responsibility executed with measured grace, drawing a line not from vengeance, but from necessity and love for the house that carries his name. "This is not exile," a Palisade aide whispered. "It is closure, and it is coming." If this royal saga has captured your attention and you want to follow how the story unfolds in real time, make sure to follow, share, and join the conversation. You won't want to miss the next chapter of this unprecedented royal drama.